Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, we're going to talk to two of the leaders of a very innovative senior care company. Their story just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show. Well, when it comes to senior care, there are a dizzying array of options, and most people don't even start thinking about where mom and dad might live if they fell and had an accident until the last minute. And that's not a good time to start shopping. To talk about that today, Loe Hornbuckle and Christina Hartt with the Sage Oak. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
All right, Loe, you're the founder, so let's start with you. How did this all begin for you? You're an entrepreneur, but you didn't really just wake up one morning and say, I want to start a senior care company.
Well, in a way I did, but in a way I didn't. So ultimately, Jeff, what happened is that I was at a stage in my life where I was trying to figure out what's next, and then the world just kind of told me what I was supposed to do, and that my dad got very sick, and I wasn't happy with the level of care he was receiving, and I started researching all these options and kind of stumbled into my purpose. So I was kind of very fortunate in the sense that I got an opportunity to do something that not everybody does, which is kind of dedicate my career to helping other people, make sure that their mom or dad or spouse or loved one, has a better experience than I did or our family did.
And one of the things that you realized is that small homes are really better for the resident than a large home that could feel like you went back to a high school of thousands of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We talk all the time about, in business and socially, are you introverted, are you extroverted? But nobody ever talks about that with seniors, right? So everyone just is like, oh, we're just going to throw you in a place with a bunch of folks. But, a chunk of the population just prefers to be in smaller groups, more intimate settings. Food delivery is much easier in small settings. If you have a cognitive impairment like dementia or Parkinson's, then having an easier to navigate smaller setting makes more sense. And so ultimately, very similar to hotels, things like that. Sometimes you want a boutique experience, right? The Hilton, it has its place, but ultimately a boutique experience might be where you go do something else. And so a lot of folks do want a more personalized, more individual experience, especially if they have high needs, right? So some individuals that have dementia or have mobility impairment, they want to be in a small setting they can navigate easily. They want to have a meal that was cooked freshly in front of them versus, cooked half a building away and distributed over steam trays. And so ultimately the whole paradigm that we try to bring to the table is that of boutique is better, smaller is better, you'll get better outcomes in smaller settings. And so we've created a fantastic product that we think kind of solves both problems, the problems of scaling and the problems of these large settings being impersonal, making you almost feel like you're in a part of a factory system, right? Sure. So that's not something people want for their loved ones.
Christina, let's bring you into this. You've been in senior care most of your adult life. What makes the Sage Oak special?
I really feel like Sage Oak is special because we pay so much individualized attention to our residents, and not only the residents, but the families as well. A lot of times what you find when you enter into the world of senior living is that it's not just the resident that moves in, the whole family does, especially when you get to the point where they are needing some sort of cognitive impairment needs. The family is diagnosed with that right alongside of the resident. So we do a great job of having a lot of open lines of communication available to the families as well, so that we can have the best outcomes for their loved one.
Sure. We're going to put some pictures up on Facebook. I want to congratulate both of you because you really make it feel like home. And I've visited your facilities, and you feel like there's a warmth, don't you?
Yeah.
Christina, staying with you, tell us about the staff, because having the right staff is critical.
Oh, it's imperative. It's no mystery that there is a shortage of healthcare workers right now in the market. We have really tried to figure out a way to retain our staff members. We do that by making sure they're compensated well, so they don't feel like they need to leave and go somewhere else. We work alongside with them. The management staff is very supportive. We make sure they have what they need. We allow some flexibility with scheduling so that they are still able to have a life of their own. It's not super common to hear a company say that the staff are the most important thing for the company. Most of the time you hear it's the residents, and while they certainly are, if you don't have the right staff in place and they're not well supported, they're not going to be able to provide the best care for those family members. So I feel like it starts with the staff and really nurturing that relationship.
Lo, let's talk about the food, because that's very important. I mean, food can be the highlight of a person's day.
Yeah, I mean, our company motto is only 6 words: great care, great food, great communication. So, I've always said that, a lot of senior housing providers, assisted living, memory care companies, they say that they care about food, but you can just watch where they spend money and see that it's not really a priority for them. So, for example, at our community in Denton, we actually have 7 kitchens in the 7 different buildings. Why is that? Well, because ultimately it'd be a lot cheaper to have one kitchen and cook food in it and then transport it all over the campus. But have you ever had food to go from a restaurant that was as good as it was when it was hot and fresh right there? And everyone's answer is always no. So the idea that we can do a pan to plate experience where not only is the food nutritious, good looking, because we eat with our eyes first, especially with dementia, but ultimately now the chef is part of the show, right? So our chef team, our dietary team, they're more than just cooks and chefs. They're part of an entertainment experience, right? So it's not uncommon to see a resident saddle up at the kitchen counter and watch the chef cook the meal. In our Louisiana community, we've had a couple of near HR incidents because you can't tell a Cajun chef how to cook gumbo, and many of the residents have done that while the chef was cooking gumbo. So the point is that we create an experience, right? So whether it's for them, if it feels like they're at a soda counter, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that kind of feeling. For other people, it's like, hey, I'm in my home, in my kitchen, right? Sitting around with my family. And then for some younger folks, maybe it's the hibachi experience, right? Because the chef is not just cooking behind, hidden behind walls. The chef is cooking. They're an actor. They're a performer, part of a show. And so that makes a huge difference. We also get incredible feedback. One of our executive chefs used to cook for a 400 or 500 bed facility. And I asked him, I said, how do you know if you cooked good food? And he said, well, occasionally they'd fill out a comment card and I'd check it every week. And so just imagine how many times you would cook something that someone didn't like if you were checking comment cards once a week. And I asked him, say joke, how do you know the food's good or bad? And he's like, well, if I plate it and they don't eat it, I make them something else. And so it's really just, and now granted, he very rarely has to make anything else, but he's available to do that. And so the other thing that's really fascinating is that it's not uncommon for us to have a house with 16 people and maybe 2 of them are vegetarian. And so because you have a professional chef, you're able to go in and do these, accommodative meals, these therapeutic diets, right? It's so easy for a chef to say, hey, I can make something delicious without adding sugar or salt or whatever the case may be. So, our chefs really get an opportunity to really tinker and play with food in a way that benefits the residents and their families.
Wow. Christina, we're going to put a video up, and I want you to kind of narrate it for us because you have memory care, and I want you to describe what we're watching here with this resident dancing with a staff member.
I would like to say that was some special party that we had, but I think I'm more excited to tell you that that's just a typical day with us at Sage Oak. These are 2 residents that are just enjoying themselves, and that's one of our caregivers. A lot of times you would see in a larger community, if you walked in and saw a caregiver dancing with the residents, a lot of times that's discouraged in the larger community. communities, because those caregivers have tasks that they're supposed to have accomplished by the end of their shift. And if they take out time from their day to interact with that, well, that's the activities job. That's not your job. We encourage that. We want our caregivers to interact and be a source of entertainment. They live with them, essentially. You know, our staff and ourselves included, a lot of times we spend more time with these residents and their families than we do with our own. So we do become a family extension, and that's just kind of what you get a glimpse of in seeing how joyful it is.
Yeah, and Loe, you and I have known each other for several years now, and we've had a chance to work together. And one of my favorite pieces was done a few years ago on WFAA. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Well, Dallas has a pretty active music scene, as you know, and because of that, it's created a special friendship of sorts.
Yeah, that very friendship that led a couple of guys down a path towards something truly remarkable. Sean Giggy has their story in this morning's Giggy Bites.
Whoa, yips.
If not for music, good friends Ashley Brightwell and JP Maloney might never have met.
We always ran into each other at concerts. That's all. That's the only time we would see each other. Music brings people together.
Since then, they've been in harmony.
Oh, I found a good one, bro.
Figuring there were more people just like them, the two started a music blog.
It's contagious.
Eventually, though, they felt they could use music to do more.
You know, help people. If you want to change the world, you have to start with yourself.
With that in mind, JP and Ashley started a nonprofit called Music is Our Weapon. Their idea was to partner with assisted living facilities and help patients using music to rekindle a piece of their past.
Yeah.
People like Parkinson's patient Harold Jones. At one point, Harold was an incredible jazz guitarist. He was in a band, even played songs for his wife. Today, though, his old guitar just sits by his bedside.
I bet you know this one.
Although he can no longer play, Ashley and JP gave Harold the chance to listen. Parkinson's may have stolen much of his ability to move and talk, but his fingers remembered every note.
Oh, yeah.
Bingo.
Keep in mind, Ashley and JP don't get paid for this.
I like it.
Both have day jobs.
That's how you do it.
They simply believe in the power of music.
It's something as simple as a song that can actually, 100% change somebody.
It just keeps bringing me back because I know that, to me, it's a void that needs to be filled.
And at least for this moment, it's a song of hope. Sean Giggy.
That's a fun song.
Channel 8 News Daybreak.
Yeah, and hopefully that will stand as hope for others because sadly, Mr. Jones passed away shortly after the filming of that story, but he was thrilled to hear that music once again. Our thoughts and prayers, of course, going out to his family.
Yeah, and Sean always does such a wonderful job of telling these stories. And if you have a story that you would like Sean Giggy to cover, just email him at giggybites@wfaa.com. That's bites with a...
Loe, that was such a cool story. You do so much with enrichment, don't you? I know you bring in outside entertainment, and I saw in some of those pictures musicians. Talk about that, Loe.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, our company motto, great care, great food, great communication. If we were going to add a fourth thing, it would be engagement, right? So, just trying to figure out how to make people have joy, right? Sometimes when you're really sick or you have some kind of mobility impairment or cognitive impairment, a lot of society is just like, all right, well, that's kind of it. And a lot of places feel like kind of like you're almost waiting to die. And, we try to, step away from that. Obviously, there's a time and place for that. And there's obviously opportunities for things like hospice in a facility like ours. But the great thing about that piece is it was shot in our facility and we're not mentioned, right? We're not the star of the show. The star of the show is our resident. And it was just so remarkable. I remember, whenever the piece was shot and obviously he was alive and did the show. And then in the editing interim period, it's not uncommon for someone for a show like that to wait 3 months. The resident actually passed away in between the filming and everything. And I reached out to the family. I'm like, hey, I know y'all are okay with this story, but given the timing, are you okay? And they go, no, this is going to be an amazing way for us to kind of tell his story and legacy. And I mean, what a great honor to be able to, kind of be the host of the place where that happened. And imagine, your loved one, passing away and he makes the news, kind of playing an air guitar as kind of his last little montage to a life with a love of music. So that was a really cool opportunity for us. And, we really appreciated the folks at Channel 8, and also our friends Ashley and those guys over at Music Is Our Weapon of doing an awesome segment.
Yes, and Christina, you and I had a chance to visit before the show. You were telling me about a resident that really touched your heart.
Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with what Loe said about us really being able to bring joy. You know, Sage Oak has been a very different kind of company for a lot of reasons, but we did have a resident that was needing to move in with us. She had a terminal diagnosis. She was younger than our average age. Average age is, in late 80s for most assisted living memory care. This lady was in her early 60s. The family had really struggled with finding the right location for her to move into, especially since she knew that this would be her last move. And they kept running into different scenarios that just didn't make the larger places right. We found out just in passing during the tour process that one thing she was very upset about was the fact that she was going to have to be letting go of her 2 cats that had been her companions for years. And they kind of just said that in a knowing we won't allow it. And Loe and I were both on that tour, and we were like, no, let's talk about that. Maybe it's possible. Sage Oak is a place where we try to be able to say yes to certain things that are very important to those people. With the assistance of her family and us all coming up with some creative solutions, she was able to move her cats in with her and have them with her during her end-of-life process, and I think that really made a difference. Some people would think that's just something very small. That's huge for us to be able to gift that to someone and let them have something that's so important and near and dear to their heart with them.
Sure, and the company is growing tremendously since you and I first met, Loe. How many locations do you have?
Yeah, so we have, right now we have 6 different locations. The locations that we're doing now are a little bit larger. They're not larger in the sense that individual licensed locations are smaller, but we have them all now on one campus. So instead of having several care homes spread throughout a city or an area, we have a bunch of care homes on an individual campus. We've effectively built Sage Oak neighborhoods. And so when you pull on Sage Oak campus, it's now, instead of a 3,000 square foot house holding a single family, it's a 9,000 square foot house, purpose built, taking care of 16 people. And next door is the same house, maybe a little different paint job on the outside, maybe a little bit different art on the inside, but the houses are all identical. We were fortunate enough to win an Architecture and Design Award last year for Senior Housing News.
And that's got to feel great. I mean, you don't come from an architecture background, do you? I
don't know if I come from any background, to be honest with you, Jeff. I'm a bit of a Renaissance man, as it were. But no, it was really cool because, if you think about it, there's so many big firms out there that have in-house this and in-house that. And really, the firm that was our architecture firm for this project, or for both projects in Lake Charles and for Denton, which are ground-up projects, our design process was I drew what I wanted on a napkin at a restaurant. And I don't remember which restaurant I know where it was. It's changed a couple times. One of those locations that always goes in and goes out. And I drew it up and they're like, okay, we see what you're doing. Maybe we should put the kitchen over here and do this for plumbing reasons. I'm like, sure, but this is the basic gist. And we came up with, we kind of call the Fat H. And so we have quadrants of bedrooms, and inside the kind of central part is common area. And so our campus in Denton is 50,000 square feet total, but our longest hallway is 50 feet.
Oh, wow.
So just think about the architectural design that has to go into a 50,000 square foot facility that has a 50-foot hallway as the longest hallway, right? The only building that has stairs is our admin building. There's not an elevator, there's not a set of stairs in our community because, single stories are great, right? You want uniform flooring if possible to reduce falls and things of that nature. And so we have a lot of natural light. We have so many bedrooms, you could turn the light off and you still qualify under the state rules of how many foot candles are available because we bring in a lot of elements. And so I think our houses really are very innovative. And, I think the reason we're able to do that is because even though there are a lot of bigger firms out there that do all these things, what I've experienced is when you're a developer and you're trying to build and create something, you got the builder, you got the developer, you have the investors, you have the architect, you got all these, you have the operator of the facility, you have all these different voices. Well, I was like, what if I was just occupied 3 of the seats or 4 of the seats and really approach it from an operational perspective? Then I could design a product that would ultimately be the best operationally possible. And so we just didn't have to compromise on things that mattered. And a lot of other projects, especially in this day and age of construction cost overruns and, supply chain issues, a lot of projects are a compromise. Development fundamentally is a compromise. And Sage Oak found a way to compromise on the things that didn't matter and to not compromise on the things that were so important for outcomes and quality of care.
Wow. And Christina, you have some exciting news. You're launching a podcast.
We are.
Tell us about it.
We are launching the Sage Oak Show, and we hope to be educational for a lot of people. Actually, if you are looking for a place and don't know where to start navigating the senior living maze that's out there, come and listen to us. We'll talk about the differences in different types of communities. We'll talk about popular hot button issues in the senior living community. So we'll have a lot of guests on that are experts in the industry as well. So we're very excited to be able to get that information out to people.
Outstanding. Okay, Loe, we're going to give you the final word. People are welcome to get a tour anytime, aren't they? To start scouting out if this would be a great location for mom or dad.
Yeah, not only welcome, but encouraged. As you mentioned, sometimes people wait till the very last minute to look at these decisions. And we know that people under pressure don't make the best decisions, right? So you need to kind of have an idea if something were to happen, what's your plan? And so absolutely, people can visit thesageoakcompanies.com. That'll have our 3 regions, and you can choose if you're closer to Dallas, closer to Denton, or closer to, we have a community in Lake Charles, Louisiana. You can choose your region, and then you can book a tour. We do like to schedule tours by appointment. Walk-in tours are great. We welcome those as well. But ultimately, if you're going to take care of someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, no holidays, then you're going to want to get to know a lot about the family, a lot about the resident. And so our tour process is pretty intense. It's a lot of questions and learning a lot about the situation. It's not just, hey, look at this chandelier, look at this, look at that. It's really more about getting to know the family and their needs. Our perspective is that, if you prescribe without diagnosis, you're committing malpractice. So in order for us to appropriately tour a Sage Oak, we have to know the family, we got to know the resident, and then we'll show you how Sage Oak could help be a solution for you.
Wow. Great way to end this show. You guys have been great guests. We're going to put the website up one more time. It's thesageoakcompanies.com. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.